This is IGN. A Link to the Pasts. This is your IGN review of The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales by Scott White. Even though its titular hero may be wearing red instead of green, The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales essentially asks the question, what if Square made a link to the past? The answer is an adventure I never knew I wanted. One with a compelling story, impressive build customization, and a world I hope we see more of. Elliot is an adventurer, a fact he makes sure everyone is aware of, who helps anyone that may be in trouble or has a problem to solve. After a summons by the king, your seemingly routine quest turns into a mission to save both the princess and the kingdom itself, traveling through time to do so. Elliot is easy to root for, charismatic without ever crossing over into cheesy. Traveling alongside our hero in red is Faye, a small and slightly amnesiac fairy who helps Elliot navigate and faces down foes with her magical abilities. One of the core components of The Adventures of Elliot is its time travel, which can be a tough thing to get right in a game, and it never quite lives up to its promise here. You'll jump from age to age, and while that's reflected in some ways as certain locations or routes change depending on the time period, these differences are rather underwhelming. It's neat to find the ruins of a once great building from the Age of Magic during the Age of Reconstruction, but venture a short distance outside the city walls and you will see the same trees and shrubs regardless of when you find yourself. Stranger still is the lack of any sort of evolution or development in the settlements of the Beastmen tribes you frequently visit. You're telling me that the wolfish Ulfor, even in 1,000 years, never figured out how to set up a few more tents? On the topic of those pesky beastmen, the enemies of the various ages don't change either. The best Elliot offers in terms of age-exclusive enemies is a palette swap for the robotic automata units, with their once-shining chassis becoming caked with an aged patina in the years that follow their invention during the Age of Magic. But while the time travel might not alter them much, the world itself and the designs of the characters and enemies within it still make this another beautiful example of Square Enix's HD 2D aesthetic in action. The drooping indigo leaves of Grandry, the crown of the Mount Phoenix volcano, and the glistening structures of the grand city of Wazin are just a few examples of stunning landmarks you'll find. Much of what The Adventures of Elliot does feels very familiar, but equipable magicite buffs and the crafting system you can use to make more of them is one of the most interesting twists it introduces. You would be forgiven if you assumed Elliot to be an RPG upon hearing it was developed by Square Enix and Team Asano, but it actually has very little in common with the genre those teams are best known for. Instead of gaining levels to become stronger, your growth is tied more to magicite that you slot into your weapons, granting different modifiers and enhancements. There are also some awesome combinations of crystals that turn Elliot from an adventurer into a weapon of mass destruction. For example, the bow's fire shot magicite will give its arrows a chance to light a target on fire, while the explosion magicite causes, an explosion when you hit a burning target. It's exciting to experiment and find a powerful combo like this, which can melt a boss's health bar in no time flat. Outside of combat, Elliot has a surprising amount of platforming. Leaping across gaps, diving underwater, and figuring out how to get up to some nearby plateau all play a far bigger role than anticipated. Dungeons tend to feature at least a few sections that will test your dexterity, requiring you to maneuver around pits or over lava. Okay, it's time to address the moblin in the room. The Adventures of Elliot shares a lot of DNA with A Link to the Past, and the Zelda series in general. Being so reminiscent of one of the greatest video games of all time is hardly a bad thing, and finding all the little nods and callbacks almost became a game of its own. Elliot even manages to pull off a convincing "Hi-ya" when he swings a sword that would make Link proud. But when you follow the overall blueprint so closely like this, it unavoidably puts you into direct comparison with what came before, and Elliot's quality doesn't quite reach the same lofty heights as its inspirations. The dungeons tend to lean on the simpler, more straightforward side, and I never found the puzzles to be much of a brainbuster. But I can see how The Adventures of Elliot could be an on-ramp to the genre, and Elliot differentiates itself significantly by having multiple endings to uncover, the best of which require a deeper dive into the various ages. There is a good amount of stuff to do and discover here. The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales isn't without blemishes, but it's still a great action-adventure game that continues to prove why the HD 2D art style is among the best around. Its interesting time travel concept doesn't quite land, with not enough changing between the various time periods to keep its enemies and environments from getting a bit repetitive, but Elliot is a hero I wanted to cheer on, with a supporting cast of characters whose stories were more than worth seeing through to the end. The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales' IGN score? 8 out of 10. Thanks for listening to IGN. My name is Tony Jackson, and for the latest updates on Elliot, Link, and all your favorite game characters, visit us at IGN.com.
Spoken Layer.